One fossil fuel of the three fossil fuels that we use today for energy generation purposes, oil, gas and coal, has been singled out as a transition fuel, or as a fuel that can help to get us from the more highly polluting pathway that we've been on historically to the lower pollution pathway that we want to get on, to the low carbon future. So natural gas burns much more cleanly than oil and certainly than coal. Is natural gas a transition fuel or is it a destination fuel?
My opinion on that is that while I respect those who talk about gas as a transition fuel, it fails to address the need for a transition of the energy system. What it does is once again support the status quo. You have a fossil fuel that is being trucked and piped and shipped to different centralized systems. I think it's a very positive step to look at the role of natural gas, as you can turn it up and down. It works very, very well with renewables. The challenge is where we are in the energy investment cycle. So if we are looking to transition towards a no carbon future, natural gas is not going to take us there. We are in a situation where many, certainly in the global north, many power stations are elderly, they need replacing. Many of our transmission and distribution systems need upgrading. If we use natural gas to simply perpetuate where we are now, we will be at the mercy of those choices in 40 years' time. When we look at the goals for 2050, we're actually saying, you know, we need the energy system to be decarbonised by 80%. Actually, to get to 80% decarbonisation, we probably need 100% decarbonisation in the power sector. Natural gas is simply not going to get us there. If it's used as a short-term transition, I can see the benefit. But simply changing things from coal to gas and keeping that for 40 years does not get us where we need to be.
The world is currently still investing in fossil fuel infrastructure. We're investing in gas-fired power generation. In many places we're investing in coal-fired power generation. Doesn't that mean that we'll have a lot of stranded assets that we will have to deal with in the future if we're transitioning to renewables and we don't need those anymore?
Well, I think, again, this is a huge issue for policymakers and for countries. Investors, many of them seem to lack the forethought to look at the implications of a global moratorium on the exploitation of fossil fuels, say in 2050. What will that do to the value of those assets? That will simply vanish. The challenge we have is to get that conversation going, to get policymakers, to get fossil fuel companies, to get renewable energy companies, to get investors to actually take a longer term view. This is what I meant earlier when I mentioned the re-engineering of the financial system. Most companies, investors, whatever, they look in 3-month increments. It's how much money am I making? What's the generation? When you're trying to make investment decisions that have implications in 30 years' time, you have a completely different environment. And I think, you know, a great deal more thinking about the mosaic of how energy systems should work in the future needs to be part of planning. It needs to be part of economic function. I mean, this again will be one of the challenges in the next 5 years, how the international community comes together to deal with not just the choices being made today, but the implications of those choices in 10, 20, 30 years' time.
If you do the numbers, you look at the reserves, which are on the books of the major listed oil and fossil fuel companies, they can't be burned. So there is this this main issue, they call it the stranded asset issue, which is faced by the major energy companies. So there is so this is, I mean, it's a very, very challenging transition. Because a lot of jobs are at stake. A tax base is at stake. Retraining, you know, you have huge workforces and labor unions who know how to extract fossil fuels and deal with fossil fuels. And that all needs to be transitioned to a whole new set of technologies, a whole new set of skills, a whole new set of financing schemes. These are being addressed, by governments. There are private initiatives and public sector initiatives and multilateral initiatives for like green bond, climate bonds. But it's a major, major transition. which has begun, which needs to accelerate. But basically, fossil fuels should stay in the ground.